So we are working through an enormous genealogy which connects the day of the writer of the book of Chronicles back to the days of Adam and Eve in the garden. So far, we have gone from Adam and Eve all the way down to the sons of Israel, and over the next few chapters we will unpack key descendants from the tribe of Israel. So first we have double-clicked, as it were, on Judah and expanded his family line. And in chapter 4, we continue with a few of the notable names from that tribe. Some of these people are famous for the things that they did, and others are well known because of the places that were named after them. You see there at the end of verse 4, for example, that the son of Ephrathah was a chap called Bethlehem. Of course, we don't know much of what Bethlehem the man did, but the place that took on his name was a significant place. It was a fairly small town and apparently unimportant for most of its Old Testament history, though it is, of course, the place where Ruth and Naomi come back to after they have come back from Moab, where Ruth falls in love with Boaz, that brilliant provider and protector. And it seems that their little family stayed in that region because Ruth's great-grandson, David, he was also born in Bethlehem, the greatest earthly king Israel ever knew. And roughly 1,000 years after that, the Lord Jesus himself, great David's great descendant, the true King of Kings, he likewise was born in Bethlehem as well. So we know almost nothing about the man that the town was named after, but we do know that the two greatest kings to have ever been born were born right there in Bethlehem. Come now to verse 9, and we are introduced to someone called Jabez. In recent years, Jabez has become incredibly well known in certain circles. People have made much of his story, reading into it all sorts of details that we don't actually have. And so, I'll be honest, my natural reaction is to almost gloss over Jabez altogether as a reaction to how he's been blown out of all proportion, the prayer of Jabez. But it is beautiful and it is significant, and so we ought to spend just a moment talking about this. Jabez, we read, was more honourable than his brothers. His mother had named him Jabez, saying, I gave birth to him in pain. By the way, the name Jabez literally means he makes sorrowful, which is a pretty grim name to give your child, isn't it? She called him that because the childbirth was painful, but on that basis, most children could be given this name, couldn't they? Childbirth generally is pretty painful, as I understand it. Still, he is lumped with that label for the rest of his life. However, we read that Jabez cried out to the God of Israel, Oh, that you would bless me and enlarge my territory. Let your hand be with me and keep me from harm so that I will be free from pain, or more literally, so that I may not cause pain. You can look that up in a Hebrew interlinear if you would like to check that for yourself. The point is, his desire is that God would bless him so that he could be a blessing to others. It would be very easy to become pretty bitter and angry at the world if your mum gave you a name that was a constant reminder to you of the pain that you have caused to her. And yet Jabez goes to God, and that is a great response. And Jabez longs to be a blessing to others, and that is a great response. And God granted his request, and that is a glorious act of grace upon his life. Whatever labels we've been lumped with from others, however utterly unfair they may be, we can go to God and we can ask that he will still make us a blessing to others in some way or another for the glory of his name. And then the final person that I want to highlight in this chapter can be found in verse 18. Here we are told of children that were born of Pharaoh's daughter, Bithinia, whom Mered had married. Mered is an Israelite name. He has clearly married an Egyptian princess, a daughter of Pharaoh. Now, according to the timelines and to the ancient tradition, this woman is in fact the daughter of Pharaoh from the book of Exodus, who adopted Moses into the royal family for a time. Now, I wonder if you've ever thought about this. Have you ever thought, how did this woman respond when Moses came back from the wilderness 40 years after he had run away? Wouldn't it be amazing to think that though the Pharaoh had a hard heart, hers was softened, and that by the grace of God, she was saved? We were told at the time of a number of Egyptians who escaped Egypt with the Israelites after the Passover, and they seem to be grafted into the family of faith. These Egyptians, likewise, walked through the Red Sea. They also saw the miracles in the wilderness. Could it be that in the abundance of God's grace, Bithiah, the daughter of Pharaoh, devoted her life to following God? Well, one day, in glory, you will find out for sure. You will meet not just these three significant people from 1 Chronicles chapter 4. You will meet every single one of these people who also put their trust in the Lord. And you will have an eternity to enjoy the stories that each one of them will share of the grace of God poured out upon them. And as well as that, believe it or not, they will be thrilled to hear the stories you have of God's grace at work in your life as well.